Imagine standing face to face with the largest tornado ever recorded in human history. Not just a storm, not just a funnel cloud, but a swirling wall of chaos more than 2.5 miles wide, powerful enough to tear steel from the ground and fling cars like toys. On May 31st, 2013, in Reno, Oklahoma, one man found himself trapped in the path of this monster. And somehow, against all odds, he survived. The El Reno tornado wasn't an ordinary storm. From the moment it touched down, it was a record breaker, growing to 2.6 miles across, making it the widest tornado ever documented. Winds inside this beast reached over 300 miles per hour. To put that in perspective, those winds could strip pavement off a highway, rip entire houses from their foundations, and snap metal power poles like toothpicks. It was a storm so big, so violent, that even experienced storm chasers, the very people who hunt tornadoes for a living, were caught off guard and lost their lives. Now, picture this. A man named David, an ordinary resident of Oklahoma, watching the sky darken that afternoon. He had seen tornadoes before. In this part of America, twisters are almost part of life. But there was something different about this storm. The clouds didn't just roll, they churned like boiling water. The wind didn't just blow, it screamed. The air felt heavy, as if the atmosphere itself was pressing down. David knew something massive was coming, something he might not be able to escape. The sirens started to wail. Those sirens in Oklahoma are like a second heartbeat for residents. Loud, urgent, telling you this isn't a drill. Get to shelter, get underground. But in El Reno that day, many people had a problem. The tornado was so unpredictable that even professional meteorologists couldn't track its exact path. The storm would move one direction, then suddenly shift, widening and curving as if it had a mind of its own. Some who thought they were safe suddenly found themselves in its path. David was one of them. He jumped into his pickup truck, his first instinct to drive south, away from the storm. But as he pushed the pedal down, the tornado seemed to stretch and swell across the horizon. Instead of a narrow funnel in the distance, it became an entire wall of swirling chaos. He realized with horror that he wasn't outrunning it. The tornado was moving faster than he thought and changing direction with no warning. Debris started to fall from the sky. Branches, metal scraps, shingles, and dirt spinning in circles. His truck shook violently as the wind pressure built. Then the road ahead disappeared into a haze of flying debris. David slammed on the brakes. Driving any further was suicide. He had seconds, maybe less than a minute, to make a choice. Staying inside the truck was dangerous. Vehicles are death traps in tornadoes. They can be lifted, tossed, crushed like soda cans. David knew this. He remembered hearing stories of survivors who threw themselves into ditches, pressing into the mud to avoid the winds. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was his only chance. Heart pounding, he threw the door open. The wind nearly ripped it off its hinges. He stumbled out, the force of the storm nearly knocking him flat. The sky above him was black and green, rotating like a giant blender. He sprinted toward a shallow ditch along the road, every step like running into a wall. As he dove into the ditch, the roar of the tornado reached him in full. Survivors often say it sounds like a freight train, but David would later describe it differently. It was like 100 jet engines screaming all at once, combined with the sound of the earth itself ripping apart. He pressed his face into the mud, arms covering his head as debris lashed at his back. The tornado was on top of him now. The ground shook as if an earthquake had struck. The air pressure dropped so suddenly that David's ears popped and rang with pain. He could barely breathe. Every breath felt stolen, like the storm itself was trying to suck the air out of his lungs. He kept his body flat, pressed hard into the earth. Mud splattered against his face, stones and sticks tore at his skin, and something heavy, maybe a piece of sheet metal, slammed into his back. He felt himself sliding in the mud as the winds tried to pull him upward, like invisible hands grabbing at his body. For a moment, David was sure this was the end. In that ditch, he thought about his family, his friends, and how quickly life could be taken away. Just minutes ago, he was driving on a country road. Now he was in the middle of the deadliest storm on earth, fighting just to hold on. And then, as suddenly as it had come, the tornado shifted. The funnel's core of destruction veered slightly north, missing him by less than a mile. But even from that distance, the winds were devastating. For nearly 10 minutes, David lay in that ditch, battered by rain, hail, and flying debris, as the largest tornado in history carved a scar across the Oklahoma landscape. When the roar finally faded, the silence was almost eerie. David lifted his head, his ears still ringing. Around him was devastation. Power lines lay crumpled like toys. Fields were stripped bare. His truck was gone, vanished into the storm, as if it had never existed. The road itself was littered with metal scraps, insulation, and even pieces of furniture from houses miles away. Slowly, painfully, David pulled himself to his feet. His clothes were shredded, his arms and legs bruised, but he was alive. Somehow, against every odd, he was alive. In the hours that followed, rescue crews and first responders would discover just how destructive the Reno tornado had been. Entire buildings were reduced to rubble. Fields were littered with debris from towns miles away. Tragically, even experienced storm chasers, people who had dedicated their lives to studying tornadoes, were caught in its unpredictable path and lost their lives. The storm would later be classified as an EF3 based on damage. But scientists confirmed that its winds exceeded 300 miles per hour, making it one of the most violent storms ever recorded. For David, survival was not about strength, not about skill, but about one critical decision: abandoning his truck and throwing himself into the ditch. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe in any guaranteed sense. But it gave him the only chance he had. That choice, made in seconds, saved his life. In the weeks after the tornado, David would revisit that stretch of road. He found the ditch where he had hidden, still scarred with debris. The landscape around it was unrecognizable. Trees uprooted, soil ripped away, and twisted metal scattered across the ground. Standing there, he felt a mix of gratitude and grief. Gratitude for surviving, grief for those who hadn't. The Reno tornado remains a chilling reminder of nature's power. It wasn't just the size, though at 2.6 miles wide, it remains the widest tornado in recorded history. It wasn't just the winds, though over 300 miles per hour, they rivaled the speed of a racing car. It was the unpredictability. The storm shifted directions without warning, trapping even experts who thought they were at a safe distance. David's story is one of survival, but also one of respect. He would later say that the storm taught him something he'd never forget. No matter how strong we build, no matter how prepared we think we are, nature will always be stronger. For 10 terrifying minutes, he was at the mercy of the sky, and by nothing more than instinct and chance, he lived. Today, the El Reno tornado is studied by scientists and meteorologists around the world. It's used as a case study for just how unpredictable and dangerous tornadoes can be, even for experts. But for people like David, it isn't just data. It's memory. It's the story of the day the sky itself seemed to fall, and the miracle that allowed him to walk away. So when you hear the warning sirens, when you see the sky turn dark and the winds begin to howl, remember this: storms like El Reno remind us how fragile we are and how precious each second of survival can be. David never forgot that night, and neither should we.